So if you're applying for a green card through marriage, one of the most important parts of the case is to show that your marriage is real. If your spouse is living inside the United States, this is usually much easier to do because you can show evidence that you're living with one another, that you share bills with one another. But what if your spouse is living outside of the United States? How do you show that your marriage is real? In this video, I'm going to share with you 7 documents that you can include in your marriage-based green card application to prove that your marriage is real. So stick around. Hi everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Michael Ashoori and I'm a U.S. immigration lawyer based in Los Angeles, California. At my law firm, we regularly post videos to make sure that you're up to date with what's going on in immigration. So if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now. Also, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up so that YouTube knows to share this with a wider audience. So let's get started. As I mentioned, in this video, I'm going to share with you 7 documents that you should include with your marriage-based green card application, specifically if your spouse is living abroad. Again, as a quick overview, one of the most important parts of a marriage-based green card application is to show that the marriage is real, that the marriage is what's classified as a bona fide marriage. This means that at the time you and your spouse got married, you intended to build a life with one another. That it's not just a sham marriage, that it's not just a marriage for immigration benefits, but in fact, you did intend to build a life with one another. And basically, the way that you show that the marriage is real largely depends on the types of documents that you include with your case. So let's get started with going over 7 highly important documents to include with your case. So the first document that I want to list is a marriage certificate. A marriage certificate is an extremely important document to include in your marriage-based green card case. Basically, the marriage certificate is proof that you're actually married to your spouse. It will typically list the date of the marriage, and it will also list witnesses to the marriage. So this is an extremely important document to include with your case. The second type of documentation that you should include with your case is evidence of regular communication with your spouse. For example, screenshots of emails exchanged with one another, text message threads with one another, and screenshots of call logs between you and your spouse. This evidence of regular communication is very helpful to demonstrate that you are in fact in a bona fide marriage. Now, as an additional point that I want to mention, the type of communication is also very important. The more affectionate that the communication is, the more compelling it is to show that the marriage is in fact real. Also, evidence of planning visits to see one another is also particularly compelling. Because again, ultimately what we're doing here by providing this evidence is to show that you are in fact in a real marriage with one another, that this just isn't a fake marriage for immigration benefits. The third type of documentation that I want to mention is pictures with one another. Pictures are a very powerful form of documentation, particularly pictures traveling with one another or pictures spending time with each other's friends and family while together is also a very compelling form of evidence. Because think about it, if you're not in a real marriage, you're not going to necessarily be spending time with each other's friends and family. So again, pictures with one another is very compelling. The fourth form of documentation that I want to tell you about is any evidence of your wedding. For example, pictures of the wedding invitations that were sent to guests, or pictures of cards that your guests wrote to you who attended your wedding, or even communication between you and the venue where your wedding was hosted at. Pictures of the wedding. Basically, any evidence of the wedding itself is also a very compelling form of evidence to include in your marriage-based green card case. The fifth form of evidence to include with your case is the receipt for the wedding ring. I know this sounds a little bit strange, but including the receipt for the wedding ring is also a compelling form of documentation to show that your marriage is in fact real. The sixth form of documentation that you should include with your case is receipts for gifts sent to one another. So anytime you sent a gift to your spouse, if you have a receipt for that gift, make sure to include it in your case. It can also be a very powerful form of evidence that you are in fact in a bona fide marriage. And the seventh form of documentation that you should include in your case is any sort of cards or messages that you sent to your spouse on special occasions. So if you sent a nice birthday message, or if you sent a nice message for your anniversary, take a screenshot of that message and include it in your case. It can be a very powerful way of showing that your marriage is in fact a bona fide marriage. So I know that I mentioned that we would discuss 7 types of documents to include with your case, but I have an additional document that can be very powerful. So I want to share it with you as well. And that is signed statements from friends and family members. So if you have friends and family that are familiar with your relationship with your spouse and they're willing to write a letter and sign it, that can be a very powerful form of evidence for you to include with your marriage-based green card case. Ideally, within the letter, the person should explain their relationship to you and any other helpful information as to how they've come to determine that your marriage is in fact real. For example, if it's your best friend from high school and they witnessed the whole process of you and your spouse dating throughout high school, if they talk about that, it can be a very compelling form of evidence to include with your case. So there you have it. In this video, we went over several documents to include in your marriage-based green card case if your spouse is living abroad. And among those documents, we talked about the marriage certificate, we talked about evidence of communication, particularly affectionate communication with one another. We talked about including pictures with each other, particularly pictures of each other traveling together, pictures spending time with each other's friends and family. We talked about including all evidence regarding the wedding. We talked about including the receipt for the wedding ring, receipts for gifts sent to one another. We also talked about including birthday cards and anniversary cards and messages sent to one another. And we finished off with the additional bonus of including signed statements from friends and family that can attest to the fact that you and your spouse are in fact in a bona fide marriage. So I know that's a ton of information. I hope you guys found it extremely helpful. If you know anybody that could benefit from this information, feel free to share this video with them. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to drop them in the comments below. If you like this video, give us a big thumbs up. And again, make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet.